So just a quick introduction from myself. I'm Jatin Sukhija, working as Principal Test Architect here at Provar. So today we'll be talking about how you can make your Salesforce release better and reduce some bugs. So Nisar, would you please introduce yourself?
Hello everyone, my name is Nisar. Yep, next slide please. Before I introduce myself, I just wanted to read out the forward-looking statement, which basically states that if any suggestions or comments made by me, you should make your purchasing decisions based on what products are available right now and are GA. Next slide, please. Hi, my name is Nisar, and I am a director at Salesforce for Health and Life Sciences. I lead the healthcare practice in Australia. I am also a senior technical architect. I architect solutions. I have 27 Salesforce certifications and a 5-star ranger. I have also published an app exchange package. Fun fact, I am a qualified doctor as well, so that you can make the connection that I am an architect as well as a qualified doctor. As a result, I am a healthcare practice lead and I provide implementation services as well as assurance services to our partners as well as organizations, both in public sector and private sector. The agenda for today is why focus on release quality, the best practices for smooth release management, tools and techniques to improve release quality, and real-world examples and success stories, followed by Q&A. So why focus on release quality, right? One thing which comes to my mind is reducing bugs actually matter. They matter a lot because the bugs have a direct impact, as you can see on the slide, on user experience, revenue generation, and team productivity. We all know that a poor user experience caused by bugs can lead to dissatisfaction, reduced trust in platform, and also higher operational costs. If we are proactive in reducing bugs, they would offer a lot of benefits. For example, it would save time and money in the long run by avoiding costly rework and firefighting. It also enhances user satisfaction, ensuring customers trust and rely on Salesforce as a stable solution. The next thing which comes to my mind is basically, let's talk about the Salesforce challenge. Salesforce basically presents unique challenges, right? When it comes to bugs, simply because there are customizations, extensive integrations, and dynamic configurations, which simply add to the layers of intricacy. Now, this complexity often introduces unique bugs that aren't found in traditional software systems. I won't go deep into which are the unique bugs, but think about LWCs, which are quite different to the way the normal websites actually build their stuff. Next is the release cycle importance. I stress a lot on this because with Salesforce's frequent updates, each release impacts the customer experience. The stability and quality are essential to ensure that these updates don't disrupt the clinical operations. Just with a show of hands, can I get to know how many of you have actually worked on Salesforce or are familiar with the technology? Okay, a lot of you. Cool. The Rework Spiral. So what happens, right? Because if you don't focus on the quality of your release, there is something called as Rework Spiral, which we enter as an organization or as a team, right? What is the Rework Spiral? Firstly, let's understand, since most of you know Salesforce, Salesforce has releases and there may be break in conventional testings. What I mean by that is basically Salesforce has 3 yearly releases that may introduce changes that can break conventional tests if not managed proactively. What I mean by that is basically you may have test scripts, test scenarios, all documented, which was working fine until the last release, but suddenly something changed and you were not proactive enough to preview it or pre-test it in the preview window, as a result of which those test scripts and test scenarios may or may not work as expected, which clearly may introduce a bug and your critical path or even, your remote working styles may have changed. Now, these impacts both the application's UI and the backend metadata, causing previously stable tests to fail unexpectedly. And this basically requires the testers to repeatedly adapt and fix their automation scripts. Next is the rework mode. What this means is basically testing in Salesforce can enter a rework mode where more test coverage, paradoxically, it's a paradoxically leads to more maintenance. As we expand the test coverage, the likelihood of needing rework increases with Salesforce update. This creates a vicious cycle, consuming time and resources just to keep tests functioning. I'm sure most of you must have experienced this. Next is the shift in the focus. A major pain point is that the time and effort often shift away from improving customizations or configuration, and it shifts towards actually fixing the tests. So the developers and the development team don't really spend a lot of time creating configuration customization, which adds a lot of value to business. Instead, they're just fixing the tests so that they can get the releases out of the way. And that's one of the key main points in the rework spiral. Next, and lastly, the customer success. So on the positive side, I want to end this slide on a positive note, is that customers who adopt advanced testing strategies or tools report significant improvements. In fact, many have achieved up to an 88% reduction in test maintenance time, allowing teams to focus on value-added tasks. Now, this emphasizes the importance of leveraging automated, best practices and robust testing frameworks. So, in conclusion, Salesforce testing can be more fragile than customizations themselves. It's critical to adopt strategies that break the rework spiral, such as tools designed specifically for Salesforce, declarative testing solutions, and strong CI/CD pipelines. So this is one question which comes a lot to me, is that how is Salesforce testing different from your regular web testing? So we have divided this into 6 parts. I'll go through each part briefly. Let's take up the first one, which is 3 release cycles per year. I think we have spoken a lot about this on the previous slides. But just to sum it up, right, because of the 3 release cycles, sometimes the UI and the UX also changes, and the frequent updates require continuous testing to ensure customizations remain functional and user experience is not disrupted. And regression testing becomes essential to adapt to these evolving UI UX changes. I barely know, SaaS platforms or even, software platforms or vendors who upgrade 3 times a year. So Salesforce is unique in that perspective, but it brings its own challenges for the testing team and the organization. Next is basically the complicated and deep DOM. So DOM is nothing but deep and complex, document object model. Now, due to its dynamic component driven design, it is deep and complex. This makes locating and interacting with web elements more challenging compared to traditional web applications. Test automation tools often struggle with dynamic IDs and element rendering. So this is the second way Salesforce differs from traditional web testing apps. The third one is Shadow DOM, which Salesforce has a custom implementation of Shadow DOM, which encapsulates styles and elements. While this enhances the performance and the modularity, it complicates testing because traditional DOM inspection methods might not work effectively. Specialized tools or approaches are often required to interact with elements within the Shadow DOM. So that's how Salesforce differs from the web testing from a Shadow DOM perspective. Next is complex nested frameworks and brittle XPath. Now, Salesforce uses nested frameworks, we all know that, and extensively it uses it in its Lightning experience. Now, locating elements within these frames using the XPath can be brittle and prone to failure when the structure changes slightly, or more or less, it does change. Now, testers need robust strategies for managing these dynamic elements and avoiding dependencies on brittle locators. Next is the nuanced environment strategy with sandboxes. So basically, Salesforce environments rely heavily on sandbox strategies for development and testing. I'll talk more about sandbox strategies in my upcoming slides, but basically the testers and the developers must manage multiple sandboxes with varying configuration, which adds complexity to testing lifecycle. I think we'll all agree with that, right? And coordinating data and deployment consistency across this environment is critical. And 8 out of 10 projects actually struggle to do that. Next is metadata-driven deployment. So unlike traditional web applications, all Salesforce development is actually metadata-driven. Some of it is also data-driven, but mostly it is metadata-driven. This means configurations, components, and logic are defined as metadata and deployed using specific tools like Salesforce CLI, just an example. And testers must understand metadata changes and their impact on functionality during these deployments. So that's pretty much about this slide, but I would close the slide on this note that these are the factors why Salesforce testing is a specialized skill set requiring testers to adapt their approaches and tools. And lastly, understanding these nuances is key in ensuring that successful test automation and quality assurance is a must in Salesforce projects. The next slide basically takes us to the best practices for smooth release management. So there are a few best practices. I've divided this into 2 parts, basically 2 slides. Let's focus on planning and process at this point of time. So basically what you need to do is set clear milestones and freeze the deadlines. What I mean by that is that define the key stages of the release process early and ensure all stakeholders are aligned. Freezing deadlines ensures that scope creep is minimized and team has enough time for testing and quality assurance. So that's the number 1 best practice. Next is, if there are any tips for managing release stability, yes, there are. You need to define the rollout. Basically, if possible, roll out in phases. Use pilot programs or sandbox environments to test the release in a controlled setting before full-scale launch. Phased rollouts help identify potential issues early and reduce the risk of widespread impact. For example, if you have a big bang rollout where there are thousands of users who come onto the platform all at the same time, you must have experienced that each one of them raises similar bugs. Bug is one, but actually the number of bugs is 1,000 because every one of them has the same problem, which doesn't give a clear picture, right? So it's always better that you roll it out in phases, iron out, stabilize, and then roll it out to the wider audience or wider user base. Next is, plan for contingencies. What I mean by that is that always have a rollback strategy in place to revert changes quickly if something goes wrong. Utilize monitoring tools to track performance and issue post-release notes enabling proactive resolutions. Lastly, to sum up, careful planning and phased execution are key to smooth and successful releases. In the next part, or the next slide, we'll dive deeper into additional techniques and tools for enhancing release management process. I think what I spoke on this slide is basically common sense, right? Each one of us does that. We know this, but unfortunately, while in practice, while we're at the client side, while we're implementing this, most of these points are either missed or not followed. So my suggestion to everybody on the call is, please do this and do what is on the next slide as well. You need to have a comprehensive test strategy. So right from unit testing, integration testing, and automation testing, all 3 of them should have a plan. So let's dive one testing at a time. So in unit testing, ensure that 100% code coverage is there for triggers and Apex classes because it is critical in maintaining high quality code. I know it's not possible all the time, and we strive for high 90s, keep it that way, but strive to get 100% code coverage for test classes and triggers. Now, what this does, the unit testing does, it helps catches issues early in the development lifecycle, reducing the risk of bugs during deployment. Next is integration testing. You need to validate cross-system data flows, ensuring seamless integration between Salesforce and external systems. This is especially important for Salesforce environments with multiple integrations with multiple systems, right? Lastly, in the comprehensive testing strategy is automated testing. Nowadays, a lot of organizations where we have implemented Salesforce, for me and my team, we have come across automated testing tools. So please use the tools to improve test coverage and consistently catch repetitive issues. Automated testing also saves time by streamlining regression testing during Salesforce updates as well. Next, the best of the best practices is collaborative practices, right? You need to encourage the QA and the developer collaboration. What I mean by that is encourage the collaboration between teams, especially the developer and the testers or the QA teams, to establish any early feedback loops. This helps in identifying and addressing potential issues before they escalate. Next is use version control. Use tools like Git to track code changes, manage branches, and facilitate seamless team collaboration. Now, branch management is a different topic altogether, but I think everybody on the call, is familiar with branch management and version control. Because if you manage that well, this will ensure that all changes are versioned and they are traceable. So who made the changes, what were the changes, and when the changes were made. Next is about CI/CD pipelines. So automate, build, test, and deployment processes with continuous integration and continuous deployment pipelines. Use this. I think most of the projects I've been a part of in the last 6 years, they all have been deployed using CI/CD pipelines. Next is code reviews. Now conduct peer reviews to catch errors early and promote knowledge sharing within the team. A strong review culture ensures better code quality and team alignment. What are the tools and techniques to improve the release qualities, right? So automated testing tools, like Provar are excellent for low code testing, providing a user-friendly interface tailored for Salesforce. I let Tarun and Jatin speak more about Provar. It's their product, but a lot of clients out there are using Provar, and there are other Provar equivalent app exchange packages as well, which are native to Salesforce. Use some of the high-coded frameworks like Selenium because they offer flexibility and robustness for custom testing needs. Right? You need to also implement continuous integration tools, right? Tools like Jenkins, Azure DevOps, or GitHub Actions to automate the build, testing, and deployment processes. These platforms streamline workflows by running automated tests and deployments with every code commit, ensuring that new changes integrate seamlessly into the system. The CI processes also help detect issues early in the development lifecycle, minimizing risks during production releases. Now, this approach fosters collaboration among developers, testers, and operations teams while maintaining release velocity. Yep. So that's pretty much about the tools and techniques to improve the release quality. I can go on and on about this the entire evening, but I just wanted to get the gist of it and present it to you in a more concise and friendly way without boring most of the crowd who has joined here. So with that, that's my last slide of the day. And next slide is thank you so much for making time and joining this webinar and hearing me out. With that, I'll hand it over to Jatin and Tarun.
Thanks so much, Nisar. This was for sure an insightful information what you have given. I would like to add some points. I believe Salesforce is highly innovative technology. They believe in innovating. Initially, it was Classic, then they switched to Lightning, then it was Visual Force, then switched to Aura components, and now LWC components. So Salesforce keeps on changing. As you mentioned in your presentation as well, that's due to its keep on changing flow, it's difficult to test Salesforce and it's different from other web applications. Now, in one of the slides, there was Prover mentioned as a tool. Now, I do believe Selenium, you can use Selenium for doing Salesforce testing if your Salesforce org is not very complex, if you have not used highly customizations. But if you want to save time, if you want to see the value, I mean, you don't have to you don't have to catch in that rework spiral. Using Salesforce specific tools would give you for sure an edge. So that's where Prover comes into picture. Since we are metadata based, now when I say metadata based, what is meant by that is you are not saving your XPaths in your tests. It's all is developing while running your test case at runtime using the Salesforce metadata. So that's how you know that you can actually focus on testing the functionality rather than stuck in that rework spiral and maintaining your test again and again. I guess that's all from my side. Tarun, you have anything to add?
Yeah, sure, Jatin. First of all, thank you, Nisar, for sharing these lovely insights with our audience. We really appreciate it. And to add on to more on the testing tools, definitely like as Jatin mentioned, like whenever we have some complex customizations, Salesforce imposes lots of challenges. So definitely we should choose a tool which can meet with all type of requirements, not just in writing the test cases, but there are a lot of other complications like implementing the CI/CD processes, integrating with third-party applications to make an end-to-end testing possible. So definitely Prover meets all those requirements. So yeah, that's all. And thank you everyone. Now I think we will quickly jump into the Q&A.
Nisar, we have a lot of questions for you. First question being, how do you encourage developer and QA collaboration to improve release quality?
Coffee. Always go out on coffees. But that is one way, because you need to build a relationship between the QA and the developers, right? Generally you see a boxing match where the QA is calling out that, hey, this is a bug, and the developer saying this is not a bug, this is an enhancement, right? So moving away from that conversation, let's talk about the best practices, right? So the number one would be early involvement. So you need to engage the QA from the design phase to understand business logic and edge cases. What I do when I am estimating or when I am preparing a plan for my project, I sit with the project manager and I onboard the QAs, not during the build sprints, but at least 1 or 2 weeks before the build sprint. Because early involvement will always help the QA or the testing team understand what are they testing, because each Salesforce implementation is different from the other, right? We are not testing the same thing again and again. The customizations, the configurations, the automations are different, and the UI UX may also be different. So if you involve them right at the beginning, it is really helpful for the testing team to understand what they are testing and what are the value that they bring to the table, and also understand the business purpose of why this has been built the way it has been built. Next is, moving on from the business purpose, is the shared goals. So define common goals for the development team and the testing teams. For example, defect-free releases, and some kind of incentive in terms of acknowledgement. I'm not talking about money or gifts here, but some kind of acknowledgement and appreciation for having shared goals and smashing those shared goals together. Next is frequent communication. I think we all understand that frequent communication would actually help. Next, what I can think of is basically, we all use tools like Jira, etc., Slack. So collaboration and communication using these shared tools. And I have done this, it's an unpopular opinion, but I generally encourage my developers to write unit tests and involve the QA early in the process. Basically, if the developer doesn't have time to write the test, unit tests themselves, maybe they can just record a video when they're unit testing themselves, or when they are peer reviewing the work of one of their other developers, right? It really helps, because if I am a tester, I am more visually, stimulated by looking at, okay, this is how I'm supposed to test. But again, as a tester, I'm not testing only the happy part. I should test all the parts and try to break it, right? That's the idea. But yeah, if it's called shift left testing, where the developer writes the unit tests. Unpopular opinion, as I say. Okay, so that's the answer for the first question. Sorry, it was a very long answer, but this is what I do, at least on my projects, to encourage the developer and the QA collaboration.
And I think the next question, you will love it more. So what proactive steps can teams take to minimize bugs before release?
Proactive steps to decrease bugs. It starts at the beginning, right? Proactively get the requirements done clearly. And this is not on the testers, but basically it's the responsibility of the entire team. What happens is the requirements are not clear. As a result, the development is not up to the mark. And then when you go and sit and UAT, the users discover that, hey, this is not meeting our requirements. Why did this happen? Because the requirements are not clearly either documented or understood by the business analysts or the developers. Somewhere we drop the ball. So define the requirements clearly, understand the requirements, and then start the build. That is a great proactive step, which we all should be taking. Next is, code reviews help. Like I said, peer testing. If I'm the developer, I can't be the maker and checker. So if Jatin is my developer, I can be the peer review. I become the checker. And if I am the developer, then Tarun becomes the checker. So the maker and checker system has to be there. And if possible, the peer review should always happen in a different environment. So as a developer, I would start coding and, develop or configure in environment A. Then I would push it to a higher environment where peer review should be done by my peer. This way, you'll get to know if you have committed everything. At the same time, has it been properly deployed? And is it meeting the acceptance criteria? Next proactive step is, of course, automated testing. Really proactive. Use it for unit testing, integration testing, and regression testing, right? It proactively, the automated testing tool will proactively tell you what are the issues that you're going to face. And if possible, automate the CI/CD pipelines, and sandbox testing is really important. So test in sandboxes which mirror the production environments. What I mean by that is basically, before you go live or before you push it to production, use a full copy sandbox with all the production-like data in it, which is refreshed regularly to see if you can catch any bugs early in a proactive manner rather than reactive when it goes in production and the production data are actually interacting with it. So yeah, so to recall, I think what I said is define the requirements clearly, code reviews and peer review testing, automated testing, CI/CD pipeline should be used, and lastly, sandbox testing, which is production-like.
Introducing the automated testing and following the standard guidelines is a must for proactiveness, I will say. So the next one is an interesting one. So what makes release quality crucial in Salesforce healthcare domain?
Healthcare domain is really a special domain, very close to my heart. Approximately, I'll tell you a small story. 8 years ago, when I came into the Salesforce ecosystem, I was kind of relieved because I was a practicing doctor, and then I came into the Salesforce ecosystem, and then I was implementing Salesforce for healthcare organizations. One key difference was that as a general practitioner or as a practicing doctor, if I got something wrong, people could die. When I came to Salesforce and the IT world, it's like, okay, if I get one bug, nobody will die, right? But soon I was proved wrong, right? Not that somebody died. What happened is Health Cloud became more and more clinical. Today, most of my clients, where we implement Salesforce, they actually implement clinical workflows. So patient safety is number one when it comes to the healthcare domain. So the question was, what makes release quality crucial? If you don't get it right, the release quality, people can die, right? Next is healthcare is, dominated and regulated, highly regulated by compliance and regulations, and healthcare systems must comply with strict data privacy laws like HIPAA, etc., right? Data integrity is important. So accurate and consistent data ensures that proper patient records, their billing records, reporting is there. I can't put, let's say the hemoglobin value of Jatin into Tarun and Tarun's value into Jatin, right? Otherwise, the medications will be swapped as well. So data integrity is really important, especially when you're migrating data from legacy systems or when there is integration which is bringing in data. So have to be very careful in the healthcare domain that you don't mess up the data. Next is operational continuity. So system failures can disrupt essential healthcare services. So just imagine if somebody's on ventilator and there is no power, what will happen? Similarly, if one system is down and Salesforce is trying to fetch data from that system, let's assume it's a pathology system where you're getting blood reports, and the pathology system is down and the information is not, coming to Salesforce. As a result, the doctor is actually having a 360-degree view of the patient. Critical information is missing. It may be about medications, pathology tests, prescriptions, etc., right? As a result, the operation continuity can be affected. So you need to have some mechanism in place, test it out, that if something like this happens, what are the methods in which you would be able to alert the doctor that information is not flowing because the other system is down. And maybe certain alerts or triggers can be made within Salesforce which will alert the doctor that something is not right. Please wait, or please revisit at some other time. Lastly, release quality is crucial simply because it builds trust and reputation in the organization. high quality releases ensure that trust among providers and patients is there, right? So to summarize, what makes release quality crucial in Salesforce is patient safety, compliance and regulations, data integrity, operational continuity, and lastly, yes, trust and reputation.
Thanks, Nisar. I'm loving the questions coming in. The next question is, what's the most common mistake people make when adopting CI/CD pipelines for Salesforce?
Firstly, let me tell you, CI/CD pipeline, it's not an easy skill to master. It took me a lot of time coming from non-IT background to understand what is CI/CD, right? So, common mistake is trying to jump into CI/CD without having a clear understanding of what exactly it is. So, first, upskill yourself properly, see what are the different ways CI/CD pipeline works and how it is to be set up. And as a team or as a program, you should have a good strategy, because lack of clear strategy or not defining a deployment strategy, whether it's source driven or org based, that is a common mistake which people make. Another one which I have noticed is environment mismanagement, where the environments are just refreshed randomly, at the whims and fancies of developers or the teams who are developing it. And the sandbox management is really inconsistent. They don't do back deployments from what has been in production to what the sandbox is. People often develop on outdated sandboxes only to realize that what they have developed is outdated when they hit state or UAT, which is in line. Last is insufficient testing. So common mistake is ignoring automated testing in pipeline. So as I say, going forward, I think automated testing should be something which every organization should look at. Of course, budget is a big factor, but if possible, please invest in automated testing, because insufficient testing is one common mistake which people do while adopting CI/CD pipelines for Salesforce. The other things which I can think of, maybe manual steps. So sometimes not everything is deployable via CI/CD pipeline, especially in Salesforce. There are a few elements which have to be deployed manually. So when you do that, make sure that you have a good backlog of items that have to be, deployed manually. So some of you must be calling it deployment sheet. So the pre-deployment steps and the post-deployment steps, along with some manual steps which have to be done. Please ensure that those are followed, and there has to be a maker and checker even there. So that's some of the common mistakes which people make while adopting CI/CD pipelines. Just to revise: lack of clear strategy, environment management, insufficient testing, and the last one was what I said, manual steps.
What I have observed, like people usually rush into the CI/CD pipeline process, but as you mentioned, it's a very critical task and it has to be handled with care. So my suggestion is always proceed with care. Don't rush into the process. You will see very good results if you are maintaining your pipelines with quality in the long run. Yeah. So the next one is like, can you share some real world example of improved outcomes through better testing practices?
I can't name the clients because they are confidential healthcare clients, but definitely there was a client for whom we were implementing mental health on Health Cloud, right? And they invested in automated testing, and the regression testing was awesome. As a result, they actually reduced the deployment time by 40%. And the early defect detection, it actually was around 30% reduction in post-release bugs. And as a result, the team out there received a 515 CSAT score. Again, it was not my team who was implementing this. It was actually a partner who was implementing it. We were doing assurance. And it was phenomenal when we compared the results before and after automated testing. Another one which I can think of is basically we actually built a custom testing framework in one of our clients, and it was basically it had adopted test-driven development, and it achieved significant improvement in data accuracy and compliance reporting, and it ensured seamless patient record tracking. I really don't have the numbers in percentage as to what the improvement is because it's an ongoing thing right now. So once I have improvements, I'm pretty sure it will be in upwards of more than 15 to 20%.
I have one question for you, Nisar. What was more challenging, being a doctor or being a Salesforce professional?
I think being a combination of both, that is more challenging, because when I interact with doctors on the other side, they expect me to talk their language and understand their pain points, which I do. And then I talk to the technical architects and the developers in my team and on the other side as well. They expect me to know the technical know-hows and know CI/CD. They want me to understand the Apex classes, coding, etc. Right? So being two in one is really challenging, because I have to increase my knowledge in both the areas, and both the fields are progressing rapidly.
Thank you for this lovely presentation, this webinar, and we really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you, Tarun. Thank you, Jatin. And thank you everyone who joined.
Thanks everyone for joining. So we are wrapping up this webinar. I hope you guys get some good insight out of it. If you want to reach Nisar on LinkedIn, reach any of us, Tarun and myself on LinkedIn. If you want to know more about Prover, we'll be happy to help. Thank you everyone. Thank you. Bye bye.